All right, good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. Today's edition has to do with international students, and it's a topic that is also dear to me as an international student or as somebody who's been once an international student. We have with me here great pleasure to have Miss Princess, who is currently the coordinator for the International Students Office. So, Princess, how are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm great. Great to see you.
You as
like
well.
I said, please, deep breath. You're the kid, so this is going to be a very exciting. So, let's get right to it. First, thank you for all you do for our international students. First and foremost, as an international student, I know the role you all play. How maybe, I'm sure you've seen it, maybe you know, but as an international student, when you are especially thousands of miles away, you know, you become like the mom for us, and that's how it was for me, right?
Yes.
So I'm hoping, you know, this podcast is really to kind of help students, and I'm interviewing everyone and everybody that can help students. So I'm hoping that, you know, we're gonna have a normal conversation, international student life, and how you can help, you know, and any information they can get from that. Okay. So, how did you what was the thought process? When you were in school, did you always say, you know, someday I want to be the international student coordinator? How did that all start for you?
No.
No.
No, I didn't even realize this was a career. I came from a small town. I'm a first generation graduate from college. And so I think probably 11th grade, I was like, I'm going to do accounting. And so that's, you know, what I went to school for. I have an associate's degree in accounting. I was working at Walmart in accounting. And so it wasn't until I received my degree from Vance Grumman Community College that I said, okay, I was the accounting manager at Walmart, and that was kind of like the highest level unless you wanted to go in management. Right. And so at that time I was like, okay, I think I want to do something different, and I applied to Wake Tech for the accounting department.
Interesting.
And I didn't get an interview. and so when that didn't happen, I decided to go into the management program at Walmart. After finishing that training, I was like, this is not for me. You know, I had been at Walmart 7.5 years, but being a manager just wasn't for me. And so while I was a manager at Walmart, I received a call from Wake Tech saying they needed a temp for the business division. And so I wanted out of Walmart. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so at that time, I had to talk to, you know, my supervisor and say, you know, if I accept this temp position, I'm willing to close the store every night. And so the rest of the manager was like, oh, yes, please do that. And so that's how I became to be employed at Wake Tech. And then I left from the business division to being a temp at Human Resources. Okay. And then that's when I realized, okay, I want to stay at Wake Tech. Right. And so I started looking at the positions, you know, permanent positions, and applying, and the technical assistant in the international office came up. Well, when I looked at the job description, I was like, oh no, because I kept seeing the word immigration. Right. And so I was like, I don't know anything about immigration. Right. I just got scared. Yeah. And so what I learned was that all the training I need would be on job training. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply. I was blessed with the job. And so I did that for about 4 years before I was promoted to the coordinator. But I love every minute of it. It's different. Yeah. It's unique. You come across different situations, and to, you know, help the students get to where they want to be. Right. I'm happy that I made this decision, and I love every moment of it.
That's great. And so, like I said before, when I hear people say they love, you know, what you're doing, it's great. Especially, you know, when it comes to international students, you have no idea. Like, I've seen students. When I was a student, international students who said, this place is not for me, I'm homesick, and will leave. I mean, it wasn't gonna be an academic suspension or probation. They literally could not connect. It was a whole different environment, and they will leave. So I always felt like whoever was in that position, I'm sure you know it. Students will radiate to you because you are their first source of support and help.
Yes.
So that's great. I'm also very happy, actually, since I started doing this podcast, how many people, like I would think, oh, this is what you started doing. I mean, including myself, I started engineering, I want to do bridges. And here now, academia, I never thought I would be doing this here. So it's always interesting to hear how your journey started and now, kind of where you are right now.
Yes.
So talking about international students, give me about 5 different internationals that you've seen. Where do the students come from mainly? Like Africa, Asia, Europe, yeah.
Like for instance, right now we have 74 different countries.
No way.
Right. So it's let's say the highest population when we're talking about F1 students. So those are, students that's in the US and their status is student status. The highest population that we have is China. After that is Vietnam.
Okay.
But we have students from all countries. It may be one student, but
it's
they're from that
right,
country.
right.
And so a lot of people, when I say how many countries represented at Wake Tech, they're like, whoa, I didn't realize that.
74,
and yes.
Right. Wow. No, that's a very wide area. So for those who probably don't know this here, tell us a little bit about F1. You mentioned F1. What is F1?
So F1 is student status. Okay. So that's when a student has went to the American Embassy in their home country or requested a change of status here in the U.S. So they're in the U.S. under a certain status, and now they want to be a student. And so either the current status they have will not give them the ability to study, or that status is coming to an end, whether that period of time is coming to an end or the student is a dependent of their parent. Okay. And so before you turn 21, you have to have your own status. And so, they may be going to school here already under their current status, and it's like, oh, my 21st birthday is coming up, but I haven't finished my studies. So these students' purpose in the U.S. is to be full-time students and hopefully, take that education back home and be great, in their home country.
You see, so I told you, I'm always learning because I thought F1 you could get from just the embassy in your home country. I didn't even know you could apply for an F1. So I know usually when we talk about F1, and then we're talking about I-20. What is?
So the I-20 is a certificate of non-immigrant student status. In order to receive that, they have to apply to an institution that's CVIS certified. So CVIS stands for Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. You have to go through a certification with SEVP, which is Student and Exchange Visitor Program, and you have to give them all types of information. And if you are certified, then that gives you the ability to issue I-20s to students who want to study at your school. And so they apply, submit all the admissions information that's needed, and then your institution issues the I-20. With that I-20, they have 2 options. Go to the American Embassy in their home country and apply for the student visa. Or if they're here in the U.S., they would send the change of status application to Immigration, USCIS, to say, I'm on this status, but I would like to be a student. And then if they are approved, they come to your institution and they be a full-time student.
Wow. So I always think I know all about immigration. And every time, I talk to someone like you, I'm hearing a new development, right? I didn't mention before our interview that I know immigration has changed a lot since 9/11, right? But since you've been working, what do you think some of the challenges are? Like when people go to the embassies, are they giving out visas more? What are some of the challenges that students are facing now so far as visa applications?
Unfortunately, even though the institution issued the I-20, that's just giving them the ability to apply for that visa. It's not guaranteed because you have the I-20 that you're going to receive the visa. The embassy, the officers there, or USCIS here makes the decision whether they approve it. And so when the students go to the embassy, the officers are looking at 2 things: the non-immigrant intent. is your intent to go to the U.S., receive the education, and return home? And then the financial ability. Do you have the ability to pay for the tuition, live in that area, expenses? Because you're applying for a student visa. It's not meant to go and just work. And so you have to have that financial capability. And so that's kind of what you're doing at the embassy, is proving to them through conversation that I'm going to Wake Tech to study and come back home. So sometimes, especially with the language barriers, students may not be able to articulate that, what their educational goal is here at Wake Tech, or if the officer asks, why did you choose Wake Tech? They don't have an answer. Where are you going to stay? Don't have an answer. These things like this may cause the officer to say, okay, we're not convinced that non-immigrant intent is there, visa denied. Or if your financial documents are not in order, it may be denied. Unfortunately, it could be where if you have all your family here and you have no family there, unfortunately, sometimes that may cause it to be denied, because once again, they're thinking you're not going to return home. So those are the main challenges. So when we issue I-20s, we try to provide guidance. Know your educational plan. What is it that you plan to do with this education when you return home? And think about these things. Why did you choose Wake Tech? Because you're going to want to be able to speak to that and not hesitate when they're asking you those questions.
So you mentioned two things. One is, we're going to walk through the process here a little bit, but if a student wants to come to Wake Tech, right, they apply, they go online, they apply, and then because they're international students, that application comes to you.
Correct.
You see it and you go, okay, I think this will be a good student, and then you issue the I-20.
So when they apply, we just make sure we have all the documents that we ask for admissions. So as long as the student submits all the documentation and everything is acceptable, we will issue the I-20, because Wake Tech is an open door school. So as long as I have the documentation, we're going to issue an I-20s. We won't turn anyone down. And then the only thing may be is that if they don't submit the document by the deadline, it may push them to the next semester. The biggest issue that students are having right now is the embassies don't have a lot of appointments, because they're dealing with COVID, just like we are. And so, they want to come for summer, but then they can't receive an appointment to September 2020. Well, that's not going to help them. And so that's the biggest challenge during COVID that I've seen, is that the appointments just are not there to accommodate when they would like to come and study.
So you also mentioned that the I-20 or the F1 status, when I was a student, I know you could only work within a certain vicinity. You couldn't work off campus.
Correct.
That's still the same?
Yes.
Okay.
So, F1 students can work on campus, but they cannot work with any jobs that are federally funded. Because as an international F1 student, you're not supposed to accept any federally funded program. As far as working off campus, it depends. You have the option to, after you've studied for 1 year, if there's an economic need, an unforeseen circumstance that has happened with your sponsor, then you can apply with immigration to work off campus part-time, but you have to submit documentation to prove that. The other way is internships. So if you're doing an internship, your institution may approve the off-campus employment with that internship. Lastly, after you graduate with an associate's degree, if you have not done optional practical training before, then we can submit paperwork to ask immigration for you to work in your field of study for 1 year.
Okay. So this is where it gets very interesting. Maybe times have changed. But when I was a student, international student, leaving my country to come to the US, it was, you're gonna come here, be an engineer, be a doctor, be a lawyer, and don't come back with nothing else. What are the international students that you see, what are they majoring in these days? What would they really want to study sometimes?
The top programs are the university transfer programs.
Okay.
So they're transferring out to, the institutions to receive a bachelor's degree. Those are the top three, the associate in arts, science, and engineering. When we're talking about applied sciences, business administration, the general business administration program, advertising and graphic design. And what was the other one? I just looked. Oh yeah, I wrote it down. Pre-nursing.
Okay.
Pre-nursing.
Really? Okay.
Also the nursing program,
right.
which of course is a very competitive program.
Right.
But those are the top
Yeah.
programs that they're studying here at
Okay.
WTEC.
All right. All right. So now, what are some of the challenges that international students are facing? Like, I know I talked about the homesickness, feeling lonely. There's nothing we can do about that, but hopefully try to see if they get some support and people around them. But what are some of the other challenges that
Right.
we talk about? Language barrier?
Language barrier,
Okay.
homesick, being away from, immediate family. Sometimes it does end up being finances. It may be where they really didn't have a lot of money in the beginning, or life happens. So, they have a sponsor, but, the sponsor now have other obligations or lose their job or things like that may happen. But I think the biggest thing is the being away. Because when I have a student come in and they're here, but back home, things are going on. A family member is sick, a family member has passed away, and they're here. Or they're here and they're going through life, but their immediate family is back home. So those are some of the challenges that they have, because they have lives just like everyone else. And if their close family members are not here, or if they don't have any at all, I've had that to happen a few times.
Tell me about those.
Yes.
Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Yes. Yes, it's hard.
Right.
And I, remember there was a student going through something, and the mother ended up coming, and she wanted to meet with me. And as you mentioned earlier, she was like, "Thank you so much, because you're like her mother." I said, "Ma'am, no, ma'am." I was like, "Please don't put that pressure on me." She was like, "But no, all she has is you here."
That's right.
And so I was like, thank you. But I was like, oh my God. So it's kind of hard, especially if a mother or father, grandfather passed away and they come in, and I do sympathize with them, because, I've lost all those people in my life. And so I couldn't imagine being here and not being able to get home to see them and things like that. So, but yes. And I think the last thing would be the American teaching method, coming into America and trying to learn the way we do things in our educational system. Can be a little challenging at first.
Yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that as well, like, learning the educational system. The other part is the cultural part.
Yes.
So I remember we had to go through orientation, and I know, I've had friends in Brazil, who they hug everything, everybody. I'm not trying to stereotype here, but we run into some issues where they're like, oh, we don't do that here. So part of the international student orientation, do you all kind of go through what could be like sexual harassment and all that? Is that part of a orientation process? Yeah.
So what I've done is I've teamed up with Jeff Myers, and he does a session on American culture and dealing with domestic students. So he does go over a lot of great information with them. He travels a lot during the summer and everything, and so we do have that for them to learn a little bit more.
I know in the past some students have gotten in trouble, like, oh no, I didn't know. That's what we do back home. It's okay.
Yes,
right.
The major thing I see is plagiarism. And
Good
so
point.
that's the biggest
Yes.
issue. And so, the deans of students will reach out, and it's like, okay, we have an international student. And so that's probably the biggest trouble that I see, that, someone will be like, okay, this person's F1. I'm like, oh, but the EFL department, English as a foreign language, they do go over that, I think, in Composition 5 to try to prepare them before they go to English 111. But yes, that's...
We're going to do a whole episode on international students and plagiarism, and we'll discuss that. So let's get right into OPT. What is OPT? And then we'll start talking about that.
That's optional practical training, and that's where the student is able to work for 1 year in their field of study. And so there's a post and there's a pre-completion OPT. At WTEC, we just do the post-completion OPT after the student graduates. And so during their last semester, I help them apply with immigration to say, okay, I'm graduating, I want to work. And so if that is approved, then it'll give them the ability to work full time, but supposed to be in their field of study. And during that time, they have to find a job within 90 days of the start date, and maintain that employment. And they also are still considered F1. They're still considered an F1 student at Wake Tech. They still have to communicate with me while they're on OPT, what their employment is, if it changes, if their address changed. So we're still in contact with them after they graduate.
I know that one of the questions I asked the very first time, this was on Teams when I saw you, I was like, when do they get an OPT? And I think you said after every degree. So if they get an associate, they could get one.
Yes.
You get a BS.
Yes.
Master's.
Yes.
PhD.
Yes. So
what comes after PhD?
I think
that's it.
Yes, I think that's it. But yes, after every degree, each higher level, they can receive OPT. So a lot of times we do have students that graduate, apply for OPT, work for 1 year, and come back to Wake Tech for a second program. So I warned them, okay, I'm glad that you're coming back, but you're not gonna, be able to apply for OPT again, because then they'll be like, oh, I'm like, yes, so please come back.
Yeah,
but what is your game plan after you receive that second degree? Because if you think it's gonna be work again, you have to receive a bachelor's, and then they'll be like, oh, or we may have it where someone comes from NC State with their bachelor's and they completed OPT. And so now they're coming to Wake Tech for an associate's degree. And I'm like, okay, now you don't qualify for OPT, right? And so they were like, oh. Yeah. And so just making sure that they're aware, because in our office, sometimes we have to go beyond the present and prepare them for the future, because they don't know to ask those questions. Yes. And so when I see that situation, I try to say, okay, what are your plans in the future? Because X, Y, Z. And then it's like, oh, okay, give you time to think about it now, so that I'm not saying all this at the time that you thought you could do something. It's like, okay, what do I do now? And then I have to say, well, you might want to go home, so we try to go beyond the present.
Once a student applies for the OPT, they get it, do they still stay in touch with you?
Yes, they are still required to stay in touch with their international office. And so once they are approved, OPT can be denied, but hopefully they are approved. They will receive the employment authorization card, their approval notice, Social Security card if they applied for that. And then they have to provide copies to me. And then it's like, okay, once you find employment, you have to provide that information to me as well. And then if they're working and they switch jobs, they have to update that information, or if they move, they have to update their address and things like that. So they are supposed to be still in contact during that year period.
Okay, you said something that scared me a little bit. You said the OPT can be denied.
It can be. It can be denied.
Why?
Yeah. And I have not had one to be denied.
Okay.
So we're going to keep going on this track. Right. But what I've seen from other advisors from other institutions, because we have a listserv, some institutions are hands off with the OPT application. We have taken that approach lately because the OPT application has switched to an online application. So international office would issue the I-20 for OPT and give it to the student. Now you have to handle it. If we do the endorsement for the OPT request and the student takes 31 days to submit their OPT application, it's denied. You have to send it within a certain period of time. If a student applies for OPT too soon, it's denied, because you have to apply within a certain period of time. You can't apply too early, you can't apply too late. The only other thing may be is that it may be marked just like incomplete, and they ask for more documentation if you miss something. I really haven't seen them deny because you missed something. They'll give you an opportunity to submit it, and if you don't, then of course it's denied. But those are the main reasons that I've seen.
So we're coming pretty close to our interview here, but I just want to keep going and going and going because this is exciting. How excited are international students when they finally get here and are pursuing their degree? How excited are they?
They're happy. You see the smile and they're like, "Oh, Miss Solomon," and it's like, because we've emailed back and forth so much, and that when they finally arrive, they're like, "Miss Solomon," or if it's someone that I've emailed a lot, I'm like, "You're here," and so it's good. My joy comes from, they're coming and they're so intimidated. Yes. And it's like, I don't know. I was like, don't worry about it. We're going to get through it. I've been doing this for 15 years. We're going to make it. Or they'll be like, do you have someone that speaks? And I'm like, no, I only speak English, but don't worry about it. I promise you we're going to get through it. And at the end of the check-in, I'll be like, see, we did it. And then my greatest joy is when they bring me the acceptance letter for NC State. Or they're graduating, I'm about to apply for OPT. I have it where they come because they've had a baby. They're showing me the pictures. And so the latest one that almost made me fall on the floor was that he came in and he was like, hey, Ms. Solomon, I have a question. I was like, okay, I answered this question. And he was like, I'm just so happy to meet you because you were my mother's international coordinator. I was like, your mother's? And he was like, yes. And so when I looked at his name and I thought about it, I was like, oh, I know who your mother is. And he was like, yes. She was like, she was like, I'm in good hands. But it was just for now it's her son. Yes. And so I'm like, whoa, I think I'm getting old. But I was just like, wow. But it was just a joy to be like, oh my goodness. And, and so it's so happy to see that they're finally here checking in. This is their dream. And they are accomplishing it and, going on to do good things, big things, even sometimes I have it and they bring me a copy of their green card. And so I'm like, well, congratulations. And so it's a joy. I love every minute of it.
Where can students find you?
So you can send me an email. It's pmsolomon@waitech.edu, pmsolomon@waitech.edu. Our website is international.waitech.edu. If you're here in the United States and would like to talk, then our phone number is 919-866-6800.
So before we wrap up, any advice, any suggestion you have for all the international students?
Just never let anyone...
Besides the fact that you're always going to be their mom.
I just keep trying, never give up. If this is your dream and this is something that you want to do, just keep trying. And then once you're in the U.S. and have the opportunity, make the most of it. Don't let peer pressure come into play. I do understand life things happens, but press through it. And because when you're on the other side, it's going to be like, I did it. I went to America and I received the education that I've been wanting to receive. And so I'm like, I don't even know if I could go to another country and
good point.
and be there and get an education. So my hats is off to all international students, and so just keep doing it. Don't let anyone stop you,
That's great. Well, once again, here's the end of another great podcast. Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. It's always a pleasure. Please do subscribe. And if you have any more questions, please send them to me and we'll take care of it. Miss Princess, I told you this was going to be easy.
Thank you.
This is great. No, thank you for all you do. I really, really sincerely from my heart. Thank you for all you do. I'm sure you're going to keep doing a great job and the students will keep coming to you. So
thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.